Hello everyone. In this class, we will try to learn about movements of small and large intestine. Movements of small intestine. In the small intestine, there are an average of 12 basal electrical rhythms per minute in the proximal jejunum, and which are going to decline as it comes to the distal ileum for 8 BER per minute. Motility of small intestine during interdigestive period. They are called as migratory motor complexes, and these MMCs pass along the small intestine at regular intervals during interdigestive period. The MMC sweep out the chyme remaining in the small intestine. Motility during digestive period. They are mixing movements and they include uh, pendular movements. These are when there is a distension of portion of small intestine with the chyme, then there will be lengthening and shortening of smooth muscles of that portion, particularly longitudinal muscles. This will result in contraction and relaxation of those muscles, and because of this, the chyme move to and fro or side to side movements in a pendular fashion. Purpose is to mix the chyme with intestinal juice. Then we have rhythmic segmental contraction. They are ring-like contractions that appear at regular intervals along the segments of small intestine when they are loaded with chyme. These ring contractions then disappear and are replaced by another set of ring-like contractions in the segments between the previous contraction. That is, the areas of relaxation become areas of constriction and vice versa. They move to and fro and increases its exposure to the mucosal surface. They are initiated by focal increase in calcium influx with the waves of increased calcium concentration spread from each focus. It is purely myogenic than neurogenic. So you can see here the segmental contraction, it is a relaxed muscle, then the constriction of rings, they are going to appear at the distant sites, okay, and afterwards they they relaxes, and the in between the two contracted segment is contracted, so there will be appearance of the rings between two contracted segments where now they are relaxed. So this is going to help in the proper mixing of the chyme. Then propulsive movements like peristalsis. Peristalsis is a propulsive wave which propels intestinal contents towards large intestine. Peristaltic contraction involves contraction of segment behind the bolus and simultaneous relaxation of the segment in front of the bolus. The stimulus for peristalsis is distension. Each contraction travels for a short distance and then dies out. A new contraction is then initiated from the site little distal to the site of origin of the previous contraction. In this way, a continuous peristaltic wave is set in intestine. The peristaltic wave always travels from oral end towards the aboral end of intestine, and this is called as Starling's law of gut. You can see the peristaltic contraction, which is going to lead to the the wave of distension, okay. And then so when the food enters here, this part is going to be contracted, and the further part, the distal part, is going to be relaxes, and the bolus is going to move in aboral direction. Peristaltic rush. Peristaltic rush refers to very powerful peristaltic waves. It is not seen normally, but they occur when intestine is obstructed. Moments of villi. Uh, uh, the movements of villi consist of alternative shortening and elongation of the villi. The movements of villi helps in emptying of lymph from central lacteal into the lymphatic system. The surface area of villi is increased during elongation, and this helps in absorption of digested food particles from the lumen of intestine. Coming to the movements of large intestine. The movements of large intestine are coordinated again by basal electrical rhythm of colon. The frequency of this wave increases along the colon from 2 per minute at the ileocecal wall to 6 per minute at the sigmoid. These movements include haustration. Large circular constriction occurs along the colon. At each constriction, about 2.5 centimeter of circular muscle contracts, and this contraction can cause obliteration of the lumen in the colon. When circular muscles are contracting, simultaneously the longitudinal muscles called as tinea coli contracts. Because of the combined action, the portion of the colon wall bulges outward like a sac where fecal matter is present. Each hostile movement reaches the peak intensity at 30 seconds and disappears during next 60 seconds and then appears again. This movement helps in the fecal matter to be dug and rolled over so that it is exposed to mucosal surface of colon. Because of this, fluid and electrolytes can be absorbed and it is converted into semi-solid form. Mass peristalsis. Mass peristalsis are forceful peristaltic contraction that can propel the fecal matter into rectum from splenic flexure of colon. It is a propulsive type of movement. Mass action contractions. Mass action contractions. This is observed only in the colon. There is a simultaneous contraction of the smooth muscles over large confluent areas. These contractions move the fecal matter from one portion of the colon to another. They also move material into rectum, and rectal distension initiates uh, uh, the defecation reflex. Defecation, distension of rectum with feces initiates reflex contraction of its musculature and the desire to defecate. Defecation involves both voluntary and reflex activity. The urge to defecate first occurs when rectal pressure increases to about 18 mm of Hg. When this pressure reaches 55 mm of Hg, the external as well as the internal anal sphincter relaxes and there is a reflex expulsion of the contents of rectum. Continual dribbling of the fecal matter through the anus is prevented by tonic contraction of internal anal sphincter and external anal sphincter, that is involuntary and voluntary respectively. The internal anal sphincter, this sphincter relaxes reflexly in response to stretch receptors when the rectum is distended. Sympathetic supply is excitatory and parasympathetic supply is inhibitory. Sympathetic, it is from the presacral nerve fibers from T12, L1 and L2, and parasympathetic is through the pelvic splanchnic nerve. External anal sphincter is the nerve supply of this occurs through the pudendal nerve. It is maintained in a state of tonic contraction. Mild to moderate distension of the rectum increases its force of contraction, whereas moderately severe distension of rectum relaxes it. Defecation reflex, that is intrinsic reflex. It is mediated by intrinsic nerve plexuses. Distension of rectum initiates the afferent signals that spreads through the meningeal plexus and initiates the mass peristaltic waves in the descending colon, sigmoid colon, and rectum that propel fecal matter towards the anus. The intrinsic defecation reflex functioning by itself is relatively weak. To be effective, this reflex is fortified by parasympathetic defecation reflex. Parasympathetic defecation reflex, distension of rectum by feces, causes transmission of afferent impulses through pelvic nerve to sacral segments of spinal cord. This induces reflex parasympathetic discharge, that is mainly from S2 segment over the pelvic splanchnic nerves to cause inhibition of the internal anal sphincter, and when rectal pressure reaches 55 millimeters of mercury, discharge in the pudendal nerve is inhibited. This relaxes the external anal sphincter and fecal matter is expelled out. So this is the diagram showing the defecation reflex, and the diagram shows the internal anal sphincter which are inside and the external anal sphincter which are outside. The food in the sigmoid colon or the rectum is going to uh, uh, increase the parasympathetic activity, so that causes the peristalsis of sigmoid colon and the reflex inhibition of the internal as well as the external anal sphincters. That is going to lead to defecation reflex. Note that gastrocolic and duodenocolic reflexes also aid in defecation. Voluntary defecation before the pressure that relaxes the external sphincter is reached. The voluntary defecation can be initiated by straining. Defecation can be voluntarily facilitated by relaxing the external anal sphincter and contracting the abdominal muscles, or inhibited by keeping the external anal sphincter contracted. Hirschsprung's disease. Hirschsprung's disease is a ganglionic megacolon, refers to the congenital absence of ganglion cells in both myenteric and submucosal plexuses. The site of involvement is distal colon. This leads to blockage of both peristalsis and mass contraction at the ganglionic segment. Therefore, the feces pass the ganglionic region with difficulty and accumulate in large intestine. The disease can be treated by cutting the ganglionic portion of the colon and anastomosing the cut ends. So that is in brief about the movements of small and large intestine. Thank you.